The plenary session of the 6th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly simply set the tone for the rest of the week-long discussions that will take place here. And of course, they did identify what they're calling the triple planetary crisis, the areas of priority, the areas of concern, the greatest challenges that the planet is facing. And those are essentially loss of biodiversity, climate change, and waste and plastics pollution. And therefore, we saw that once that plenary session ended, that the delegates, the experts, everyone who was assembled here then broke down into smaller groups, the main idea being to break down the challenges, to identify the challenges, and to start talking about solutions, breaking down those challenges into the smallest common denominator, basically the smallest bits that could be addressed by each and every individual. We did hear them speak about fossil fuels, which are used to make plastics, and how this impacts the environment, calling for a treaty that will basically address the life cycle of plastics so that they are not used just once and then discarded into the environment. And among other things, how communities can be involved in sustainable growth, how to have renewable and sustainable energy sources. So basically just breaking down the issues, coming down to what the problems are and how each and every actor can be involved in finding those solutions that are very necessary for the planet. Richard.
Very interesting indeed. Finally, before we let you go, Wilkester, what's on the agenda today and who is expected?
Well, today started with the launch of a national tree planting exercise. We did see Kenya's First Lady, Rachel Ruto, launching a nationwide tree planting exercise outside of the UN complex at Karura Forest, which is on the outskirts of Nairobi. The aim is for Kenya to plant at least 500 million trees under this particular initiative. But that is not the only thing that happened. We have also seen there are different sessions that are taking place here today. There have been discussions by businessmen about the environmental challenges that they face, including issues such as, power, sustainable and renewable energy, mining in a way that does not destroy the environment. And these are a number of issues that are still in discussion. At the end of the 5 days, they do hope to have different resolutions. They are discussing 19 different resolutions on the table, and they do hope that they will have come to some sort of agreement, if not on all of them, then on most of these resolutions. Now, the thing to note is that the resolutions that are made here are not legally binding, but they do provide a framework, a guideline of sorts for countries going back to create national policies that they can then use, and therefore in that way they are able to move the wheel forward and help to effect change. So we'll be watching out for that, Richard.
All right, Wilkester Nyaba reporting from Nairobi. Thanks for that. Environmental experts and advocates have called for decisive action against the ongoing plastics and climate crises, which they say are fueled by fossil fuels. Speaking on the sidelines of the 6th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly, Greenpeace Africa and the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty Initiative called on member states to adopt a comprehensive global plastic treaty, which addresses the plastic life cycle. They also called for an international fossil fuel treaty that would phase out fossil fuel production and support a transition towards renewable energy sources.
% of plastics ever produced comes from fossil fuel. Basically, raw material of making plastics is fossil fuel, and we know fossil fuel are the major culprit that creates the climate crisis. So in each and every stage of plastics production, we get gases, greenhouse gases and other emissions being released to the atmosphere, and this exacerbates the climate crisis.
Plastic production has particularly been shown to have harsh impact on low-income and marginalized communities. Most of these, live in sub-Saharan Africa. These adverse effects, health effects, are stemming from the petrochemical plants, landfills, contaminated water bodies, and the incineration of plastic waste. The Global Plastic Treaty must therefore reduce plastic production by at least 75% by 2040 to ensure that we are avoiding the worst impacts of the climate crisis. We cannot protect our climate, our biodiversity, our health, and curb pollution unless we reduce plastic production.